Welcome, my fellow leaders and listeners. This is Succession, a podcast about the pursuit of success, the art of leadership transitions, and the legacies that shape our future. I'm Corey Grillo, and in each episode, we explore what it means to lead with impact, adapt through change, and create a lasting mark on the world of business. Whether you're navigating a career shift or planning your next big move, you're in the right place. Today, we're meeting with Alejandro Rivas-Micoud, founder and CEO of Userlytics. Alejandro's dynamic career spans over 3 decades, during which he's founded and led businesses across multiple industries, multiple countries, including his groundbreaking work in remote user experience testing at Userlytics. As a leader who's successfully navigated transitions and built enduring companies, Alejandro brings a wealth of insight into what it takes to innovate, adapt, and leave a lasting impact in a rapidly changing business landscape. Today, we explore his perspective on leadership, succession, and the evolving role of innovation in shaping a legacy. Let's join him now. So welcome, Alejandro. It's such a pleasure to have you here on Succession. I'm so glad you could be here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I know. It took us a long road to get here with all of our technology and timing issues, so I'm going to take advantage of every moment. I guess let me have a little bit of information about you up front for our audience, just so they can have a little background on you. Do you mind sharing?
Sure, absolutely. So born in San Francisco and spent a large part of my life living and working in various countries, Spain, France, and Japan. Started my working career in the United States Navy. And then from there, I worked as a nuclear engineer, a nuclear startup engineer for Bechtel Power Corporation in various locations around the U.S. And then went on to do my MBA at a place in France called INSEAD. And from there, I went to Japan, got involved in the telecom industry, spent 5 years there, went back to Europe, and started I sort of started my entrepreneurial career in Japan, but it was definitely full steam ahead in Europe.
Wow.
And started some audio techs firm, and then afterwards 2 telecom firms, one fixed wireless and one fixed landline. Sold both of those companies in early 2006. And then after a little bit of a break, went on to launch a few startups in the US, one of which I'm running right now, which is Userlytics Corporation, a remote user experience and usability testing platform.
Okay. Well, it's safe to say then you've been well-traveled and you have some business experience.
A little bit,
yeah. I mean, that's amazing.
Can always be improved.
Yeah. I mean, and you're still improving it every day, which is pretty remarkable. What did you set out? I'm just curious, but what did you set out to do, like when you first were kind of developing or even imagining your career?
Well, I think I always wanted to start a business. I mean, even when I was 14, I started a remote grocery delivery business, and at the time I was living in Spain on the coast, and there were a lot of like English retirees and German retirees and U.S. retirees, not that many, a few. Anyway, started a business. I convinced a local supermarket to partner with me, and we would deliver groceries.
Amazing.
So at that time, the idea of getting groceries delivered was, non-existing, not a thing.
That's so interesting.
A useful lesson from that experience, which is a good idea before its time.
It's not a good idea.
Doesn't go anywhere. Exactly. And another example of that, which is more famous, is, we all use the iPad and the iPhone and all that stuff. But if we think about it, the iPad was invented more than 10 years before it emerged. And it was called the Newton. And it was invented by the same company, Apple. But it was a failure. And why? Because the underlying the context in which it was launched, the technology, everything, it just couldn't work. So it was an early proof of concept, if you will. It didn't work. 10 or 12 years later, the timing was right. It worked.
Wow.
So I guess I should have kept up at the grocery store business. And
all these years later.
And I would have had Instacart behind me instead of...
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you must be kicking yourself.
It's okay.
You moved on.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of things that you did have right timing about. So I guess, what was the first time when things started clicking and all your endeavors started really coming together and making a lot more sense in real time?
Yeah, well, I'd say, the audio text business that I launched in '94 in Spain had a typical lifecycle that I've seen with many startups.
Okay.
You got kind of like 3 phases. The initial phase, joy, excitement,
energy.
This is great, energy, all that stuff. And then you go through the valley of the shadow of death, which is, really hard.
Yeah.
And most startups end there.
We're talking probably around year 2, like in the beginning.
It was between after the first 3 or 6 months. That's when all of a sudden we started.
Yours happened early.
As Napoleon once said, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? So
Wise.
No business plan survives first contact with the market. That's the reality.
That's a great.
So anyway,
point.
3 or 6 months in, you're battling the realities, and it was only 3 years later when all of a sudden everything clicked, cash flow positive, growing quickly, product market fit, etc., and everything was great. So that was the first.
Yeah,
one.
that was a quick shot up though, because typically, I mean, from what I've seen in working with startups, you do have a little bit more excitement that lasts a little bit longer. It's the scale point, right? So you must have been scaling quite, like it started growing at some point.
Well, it depends, because if you do a startup and you have a lot of money up front,
then
the moment of realizing that things are not exactly as you had planned may be far off into the future. But the reality is, I think most of the companies that I've founded or co-founded have been bootstrapped. In other words, we haven't utilized institutional capital. And so that puts constraints on you.
From the start.
You got to start actually paying clients quickly. Otherwise,
it's a totally different mindset and drive at the beginning, obviously, and also I guess priorities, look different from that vantage point when you have capital versus not having capital. It's just a different. It's a different way to move.
Totally. When you have capital, it's like, okay, well, let's hire the best. Let's do this, and you don't have to make choices. And that's the problem. You don't have to make choices, so you don't make choices. And that comes back to haunt many entities that use external capital.
I feel like we could do a whole different episode about just this one small moment of capture of time, that we probably should at some point, but not today. Today, we have a different topic in mind. And I think also when we're thinking about the lifespan of a company, and especially with the startup environment, a lot of them start with the end in mind. Like they're thinking of how they want to sell, and what their trajectory is, or what price point they want to hit, or, whatever they already are thinking about that. And that's not always the truth for every company. Clearly, like not everybody wants to just sell their company right out the gate. Right. So what kind of approach, or did you have an approach to that kind of line of sight of succession in these situations?
Yeah. So, first of all, I'd say that, a lot of companies don't even think of that point. A lot of them just think for them, the objective is getting institutional capital, and then they think their job is done, which is not at all the situation. But, I never really thought about it much, to be honest, until I did my first major exit. Because the first firm, the telephony firm, that just went on operating for years. I turned over the management and stopped actively managing, but it was producing dividends for years afterwards.
Right.
And, that's all great. But the 2 telecom firms that I founded, I sold them after all kinds of adventures in early 2006. And what happened there was quite interesting because until the moment of sale, I was working at 150%.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the deed is done. And I wake up in the morning. And what do I do?
Yeah.
And why isn't anybody sending me an email asking me to make a decision?
Why didn't my phone wake me up with pings? Yeah.
And yeah.
Right.
So
that's jarring.
It really is and was. And it was actually one of, if not the most difficult moment in my life. That first, I'd say 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
I eventually figured it out.
Sure.
And, nature hates a vacuum, and eventually activities fill in.
Right.
And,
we
you
hope
start
they're the right ones.
reorganizing your life. But I had not really planned for it. I had this kind of hubristic belief that I could deal with it. Yeah. And it's funny because when it happened, I was actually I was taking a leadership course, an excellent leadership course with 20 very senior executives. And one of them it was slightly different. He was a high-level executive in a bank, and he was given in kind of one of these golden package goodbyes.
Right.
So, not exactly the same. He didn't sell a company, but they gave him a bunch of money.
Yeah, it was a nice exit.
Go on, right? So, a nice exit. And when I saw him, I saw him, 3 and 6 months before the deal, and I saw him 3 months after. And when I saw him 3 months after, he looked like he had lost, close family in a disaster. He did not look really, really well. So, I think it's something that you really have to plan for. So that's that aspect of succession.
Well, that's huge, meaningful. I mean, thank you for sharing that, because this is talking to something that people don't bring to the forefront of the conversation at all, and often try to avoid it, even if they've had the experience of it, because they're worried it's a reflection of something of, their capabilities, which it's not. It's a total human experience and completely understandable. And if not prepared for something, I mean, it's a loss. It's a gain and it's a loss. Like, that's not usually what we're what we're talking about, having both of those things be true. But if you can really think about it that way and understand that concept, then you can prepare for it so much better, and the resilience in the future would be completely different.
Exactly. I think that most of us forget when we think about an exit. They think, I'll take extended vacation. I'll do this, I'll do that. I'll travel more. I'll do that. And all that's great. But at the end of the day, we like working. We don't like just, waking up and saying, well, I'm just going to hang around, whether it's in a hotel room in Bali or whether, it doesn't matter. It's still, we got to do something, and hopefully something we enjoy. And so if you take that away, you got to have something else to replace it, or at least plan.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, and the reason of starting this podcast in particular, having been involved with the planning and at least, the execution, and kind of coming in late in the game and coming under the umbrella of the company needs the assistance to make these moves, but then working with the people that are moving into their next phase or whatever picture of that they're designing for themselves without any preparation and seeing the impact. Like, that needs to be part of the succession plan, not just for the company, but for the people. And that's so imperative, because they also bring to the table so much, whether they're going to be contributing more to their families, or they're going to be contributing to, family offices or nonprofit organizations, or starting other companies, or expanding their portfolio, or mentoring. Whatever it's going to be, it needs to be thought through so that transition can be more meaningful for everybody, but also executed so much more seamlessly for everybody, So 6 months to a year is a long time to be kind of identifying this for yourself. So what did you discover? How did you come out of that?
Well, about a year. I mean, the first year, like I said, it was just really, really tough, period. But at the end of the year, I decided to do something that I had always wanted to do, which was to learn how to make movies. Yes. And so I went to London and took a movie directing course where it was a very hands-on type of thing, where during that period of 3 months, I actually wrote and produced and acted in and directed 4 short movies
amazing.
and edited, and everything involved with movie
what a
making.
passion.
Fantastic time. I really
Wow.
enjoyed it. And then after that, I realized that I'm not Steven Spielberg.
That's okay.
Too late.
We already got one.
And I was also at the time, writing a novel, and I completed that. But again, I realized that I was not Stephen King. And, so realizing those two things, I said, well, I'm kind of okay in starting projects and things. So that's when I decided to get back into the startup world.
Right.
And I started looking for an idea, and I launched an initial idea that didn't work. And then we launched Userlytics, the current company. So
amazing.
So that was kind of the transition. Yeah. But I do want to say one last point about the succession planning or lack thereof of, when I sold those 2 telecom companies. I had a great team, and I've really loved the fact that subsequently getting together with people for dinners or drinks or whatever, ex-employees of that time who have since moved on to numerous other, occupations. Right. All of them consider that period of work as the best part of their professional life. They love that time, which is, I felt great about. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, when I turned over the company, I had somebody working closely with me who was kind of okay as an executor, but I hadn't really ever considered him as a CEO. But because I didn't plan for things strategically, the buyer thought that this person was the natural person to take over from me. I mean, they offered me the position. I didn't want it. I wanted to move on because I didn't realize what was going to happen to me, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, this person got the job and ran it into the ground, which was negative for all the
people,
fellow colleagues and employees or whatever. So, next time I'm definitely going to give a lot more thought. Yeah. Not just to my own personal plans, but
the impact of the culture,
what
the company.
I leave behind, the legacy, the company and the employees and management and everything else. So, sorry, I just wanted to add that.
Please, that is a great lesson to have been learned, and being able to execute that and change and show up differently in the future, that you learned from it. You took that and said, I'm not doing that again. I love hearing that. I can't tell you how many I just had a conversation literally yesterday with somebody who told me basically, well, nobody cares once they hand it over, once they sell. Like, why would they? And I, of course, challenged that. But this person was pretty content with that. And then it's not my problem anymore. Right. And that breaks my heart.
I've seen that.
And so have I. Yeah. And that is definitely, I didn't take that away. I said, you're right. There are definitely people that, have that kind of attitude and approach to it and aren't going to change it. But that's not, in my experience, the majority. And those are the people that I want to work with, right? Those are the people I choose to work with. Right. And there's people that I choose not to work with, because that's not that's not the point. But when we're talking about people, that's what I do. Why would I go into a situation and when somebody doesn't care about the people? And I would challenge them on whether their personal fulfillment is really being echoed once they're handing off that company, and any pangs of, I had somebody tell me on an interview too, like, they do a lot of acquisitions and they're part of PEs. And every time somebody is, selling their company, they always ask, what's going to happen to the name? And that's the moment that he always sees that piece of humanity come in, of like that attachment of like, but I do care, like, and it really does mean something, even though if they're not trying to show that, that they always ask. And so there's always that underlying, like, there's just something about it, even if they're like, it's fine, whatever happens now, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, like, the more you invest in that, I mean, you can prepare, and it also is more meaningful, and you can go on to do even bigger and better and deeper, more meaningful things when you carry that with you, like you did. So you must be showing up quite differently now.
Well, hopefully the next time we'll definitely do things in a different way. But I feel a lot of contentment at the company core cultures that I've been part of, both in that company and those companies, but also the current company. And it's it's you're kind of coaching a team that is doing well.
Yeah.
It's playing soccer or whatever it is, and it's a great team and it works well together and they feel happy and content and motivated and fulfilled.
It's
And
rewarding.
and you're part of that. So that's a great feeling.
I mean, yeah, I think that's what it's all about. It sounds like, I mean, you could have gone a lot of different directions after those sales, right, of those companies. And, you went into a lot of creative spaces. There was a lot of success you probably could have had in a lot of different ways. But those things didn't have people attached. The things that you were doing, really, you weren't inspiring or mentoring or doing that, right?
I will say this though, the movie directing piece.
Yeah. Oh, that felt it.
They were all volunteers, the people who worked with me on this, and so like especially the last one, which was like it ended up being a 20-minute short or thereabouts, but it's hours and hours and hours of footage and scenes, and we were working from like, I don't know, we'd start at 9 a.m. and we'd finish maybe at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m.
Right.
So all day for 4 or 5 days.
Together.
All volunteers.
Yeah.
I've never had a group of people who worked so hard because, that's the great thing about movie making. People love it.
Passion.
They just
raw.
love being part of it. It was great.
That's great.
Great feeling.
Well, I still think we can combine these worlds for you. No problem with all of the things you're experiencing on a daily basis and infuse these. I mean, we want insights into your day-to-day and want to see more of what it feels like for you too. So how are your teams being built now with these things in mind? And is it something that you've really invested in more than you have before?
Well, yes. After that exit that I told you about, I attended a kind of an entrepreneurial conference at my business school at INSEAD. And there was a guy who came on stage and he was running a very successful startup. I mean, talking about maybe hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue or even more. And he said, I dedicate 40% of my time to human resources.
Yes. I want to clap. I want to applaud. Yay.
I was like,
right?
What? I was like,
everybody
what?
there was like, I'm going to go.
What are
I'm not listening to this guy.
What are you talking? Right. What are you talking? How is that even possible? I was shocked. And but I realized how wise he was after I thought about it some more. And I haven't reached that level.
Sure.
I think that would be difficult. But I do focus a lot more on that. And especially in today's age where you have companies like ourselves that are 100% remote.
Huge impact.
The glue that binds people together is more ethereal. And so therefore, the old saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast, which I'm a firm believer in, is even more true when it's 100% online. And even more so if, like us, we're talking about multiple countries.
Yeah.
We have people in the United States, in Spain, in Portugal, in Croatia, in Colombia, in Argentina, in Brazil, in Mexico. So, people around the world, binding them together as a team online, it's great because the only way to do that is to achieve a common purpose and a common feeling of camaraderie.
I'm so excited about this right now. Like whoever that person was talking, I'm like, please come with me everywhere I go. Cause this is we're like shouting it at bricks so much. And people really don't understand the impact to the bottom line that this creates. And it also creates this beautiful culture, which why not have a beautiful culture? And when you're talking about all these different places around the world, like the reason I work in corporations is because we bring people together that would never be together before in any other circumstance. And here they are all sitting at a table and we're trying to figure out how to have everybody work together towards a common goal. Like this is so fun and exciting. And all the things that can be contributed to these situations because of the experience that are so diverse. We're expanding the diversity. We're making, like, there's new information going to be coming in from everywhere, new experiences, new perspectives. Like, there's so much wealth to that. And we really can, we can capitalize on that in the most healthy and positive way for everyone involved. And why not? So yay. Yes, let's do that. I like that.
Exactly.
Hopefully people are listening and they're understanding that this is going to be worth every minute of their investment of time and money to do something like that. So what's next for you?
Well, I do have I'm running a company, it's full-time occupation, and that's occupying my time. But I do have a project on kind of as a side burner for whenever it comes, I move on. And it's a nonprofit initiative. And the idea was, human capital is the most important capital in the world. So if you want to help a poor region, a poor community, a poor country, improving human capital, that beats everything else, I think. So the second thing is the quality of educators, of teachers, varies tremendously. And education is stuck in a model that was invented hundreds of years ago when knowledge was static and not dynamic. And, the whole model of education is completely antiquated.
Yes.
The third thing is the majority of people out there who are doing well in life would like to help people who are not doing well, but they only have so much of their time that they could invest. They're not going to take a trip and go to another country and spend a couple months or a couple of years. I mean, they can't do that mostly. But if you could connect them online as kind of mentors / educators to disadvantaged people in other parts of the world to just complement whatever education they're receiving and mentorship. And that's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
So I have that idea and been working on it in my off times for some time. However, with the advent of AI, I'm not sure if that idea even makes sense anymore, because it may be that you don't need those people. You can just connect the kids to AI and AI takes and improves education that way. So I'm not sure about that one, but that's kind of the project that I would like to get involved with when the time comes.
I have a lot of thoughts about that. And we could definitely talk about it more. I know the nonprofit sector and, me being my social worker self at the core. These initiatives are so important and to invest in. So I can't wait to hear what you do. And I know where your heart is. And I know anything you build is going to be meaningful and adaptive because, it sounds like you're already thinking about the challenges that may present. And I'm sure you'll come up with ways to pivot and ensure that it's a valuable tool for whomever you get involved with. So, anything you can share and anything in the future that comes up, we're here to listen. So please think of us. I appreciate you being here.
I will. I'll definitely take you up on that.
That's good to know. All right. I appreciate you being here. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but we do hope to hear from you again. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Corey. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care. And before we go, a big thank you to all our listeners for tuning in today. We hope you found some valuable takeaways to help you with your own leadership journey. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to dive deeper into your own succession strategy, or you want to be a guest on the show, reach out and email us at ask@CoreyGrillo.com. Remember, great legacies are built on smart strategies. Keep leading forward, my friends, and we'll talk soon. Bye.